The engines hadn't yet roared to life. The street was in a weird sort of quiet, the kind that's heavy, like the world is holding its breath. The afternoon sun hung pale and high, its long motionless shadows stretching across the pavement. At the sidewalk's edge stood a little boy, shaking. His grey hoodie enveloped his body, his jeans ripped at the knees, and his tiny fists were balled into tight fists, as if he was attempting to keep himself from falling apart. Kneeling at his feet was a man constructed like a tempest. Tattoos adorned his arms, every ink a tale of highways, loyalty, and wars fought and won. His leather jacket was emblazoned with the insignia of the Hells Angels, patches worn but proud. This was Ryder Hale, a man whose silence sometimes spoke louder than words. Behind him, 5 riders in a line, hard men, weathered skin, eyes keen and watchful. But in this moment, they all regarded the shaking boy like they were gazing at a spectre. The boy's voice was a breaking whisper. "They took my sister." His sentence shattered halfway through, and suddenly, the peaceful street no longer felt safe. It was as if the calm before something irreversible. Hook transition. Until next time, if you subscribe to kindness, second chances, and the strength of doing what is right, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories, because sometimes even the toughest of souls bear the largest hearts. Ryder didn't respond immediately. He simply gazed at the boy, whose name, he'd soon find out, was Evan, and in Evan's tear-stained eyes, Ryder saw something he hadn't seen in years. Helplessness, the kind that cuts deep. The other bikers shifted uncomfortably. They were men who'd witnessed everything: crashes, fights, losses. But the image of a crying child standing alone on a sweltering street, that always struck differently. Ryder stood up slowly, his boots digging into the hot asphalt. He rested one firm hand on the boy's shoulder and spoke low. "Begin at the beginning." With quivering breaths, Evan recounted. His sister, Mara, only 12 years old, had been abducted. A black van, 2 men, by the park on the other side of town just an hour or so ago. His mother was at work. He and Mara had been playing. And then, in the matter of an eye blink, she was gone. He pursued the van until his legs buckled, yelling her name. But no one halted, no one assisted. The police hadn't even shown up. So he ran until he spotted a line of motorcycles reflecting in the sun like an army about to do battle. He had no idea who these guys were. He just prayed someone, anyone, would listen. By the time Evan was done, Ryder's jaw had set like granite. His brothers did not need to be given orders. They looked at his eyes. Steel clashed with purpose. Ryder spun around to his men and gave them 2 words. "We ride," and that was enough. Silence broken. Leather creaked. Engines came alive, and the street erupted with thunder. Ryder hoisted Evan onto the back of his bike, buckling him securely in. The boy's small hands grasped his vest, not in fear, but hope. They roared off in formation, tearing down the neighborhood. Curtains flew up. People gazed. Whispers ran. The angels are flying again. For 20 dogged minutes, they navigated through traffic with impeccable timing, a brotherhood in motion. Ryder's contact, Vince, had already gotten to work. In seconds, a call came through. He had a lead. The summons arrived quickly. A black van was seen speeding down a local gas station on Route 9, speeding directly towards the old industrial piers. A place Ryder and his crew knew all too well. Too many bad memories. Too many dark stories buried there. As they arrived, the engines switched off simultaneously, thunder dissolving into the weight of silence. It is the sort of quiet that gets your heart beating louder than the sound ever could. There it was, the van, parked crooked by the loading bay, back doors ajar, as if it were keeping a secret, and then they heard it, a soft, muted cry for assistance. Ryder's eyes grew hard, a swift signal of his hand, and the bikers fanned out like darkness. Instinct, years of experience ruled. No words, no hesitation. A man slipped to the rear. Another went around in a wide arc. Ryder approached the van directly, his pace slow, measured. The sun glinted on his tattoo, giving them the appearance of throbbing with life, as if each design on his body recalled a different battle for justice. Suddenly, one of the abductors stepped into sight and stood stock still. He wasn't accustomed to being the pursued. In mere seconds, he was on the ground. Boots pounding, sound of leather snapping, and it was done before it even started. Ryder ripped open the back doors of the van, and there she was, Mara. Afraid, tied, wide eyes in shock. Ryder didn't say a word. He just reached out, untying her wrists with careful, steady hands, his rough touch made gentle by purpose. "You're safe now," he murmured, the first words to break the silence. The moment Mara was free, Evan sprinted forward, throwing his arms around her and holding on like he'd never let go again. For a long, peaceful moment, the bikers didn't move. They simply stood watching 2 children reunite. And in that moment, all the patches, all the scars, all the miles they'd ever traveled at last made sense. They weren't fighting rebellion. They were fighting for moments like this, In a few minutes, the howl of police sirens shivered the peace. The officers burst in, but the bikers didn't protest, didn't justify. They simply stepped aside, nodded, and let the law run its course. As the dust cleared, Ryder gazed at his brothers, all of them wordless, the kind of wordlessness that occurs when adrenaline wears off and purpose is left behind. Nobody should ever have to be alone in this world, Ryder murmured. Not a child, not ever. When they rode away through the neighborhood, the sun was more vivid somehow. On the sidewalk, Evan was standing next to his sister and their mother, tears running down her face. She mouthed, "Thank you," over and over, but the sound of engines consumed her words. It didn't matter. The men had already heard it in their hearts. Hours later, when the sun faded below the horizon, the bikes stood in a neat line in front of Ryder's house. No celebration, no words, only peace. Ryder reclined on his chair, eyes shut. In his mind, he heard that shaking little voice again. "They took my sister." A light smile wandered across his face. The sort of smile that comes to a man who knows he's done what's right. If this tale warmed your heart, if it made you realize that kindness is possible from the most unexpected source, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories, because in a world full of noise, humanity still whispers softly and acts courageously. Before we close, let us know in the comments, what would you have done had you been Ryder? Would you have ridden out too? That afternoon, the Hells Angels didn't wait for orders or lights or cheers. They simply rode, not for glory, but for a boy's whisper that kept them reminded of who they really were. And when their engines disappeared into the sunset, the world was reminded of one good thing. Kindness doesn't always wear a halo. Sometimes it wears leather.